We've been talking for the last several weeks about how to make space in our lives for God's delights. And this morning, as we explore the delight of patience, it seems that God might be calling our attention to the process itself, the process of making space. Patience is not something that Americans seem to do very well. There's probably any number of reasons for that. One of them is the word itself. The word patience, it has this root meaning of calm endurance of adversity. That doesn't sound very pleasant. We exhibit patience. We have to find a way of practicing patience specifically during unfortunate times, difficulties, suffering, and sorrow. To practice patience is actually to practice holding space. Holding space for something that we're not sure what it's going to turn into. And our ability to exhibit patience determines what's going to come from that open space. I think our story today from the Gospel of Matthew, I think the entire story is about how humans practice patience with God. And the short version of it is, I think humans are really good at practicing patience when we know what to expect, when we understand what's happening. I think we are very bad at practicing patience when we start thinking about the impossible, things that are completely unexpected, things we don't understand. Look at the story. Jesus puts the disciples in the boat. That's fine. Most of them were fishermen. They understand how to sail a boat. They're supposed to go to the other side of the lake. There's a big storm. Nothing wrong with that either. They've spent lots of times on water. They understand how to navigate storms. And apparently this one is kind of severe. It takes them all night to get away from shore. And by morning, they're not quite to the other side. But that's okay. They're not crying out for help. They're not thinking that they're in danger of drowning or being shipwrecked. They're doing just fine. Navigating the boat on the stormy sea. It's all good. They really only start to lose it when Jesus walks out to them on water. At first they think he's a ghost. That's as close as who knew if they ever believed in ghosts before, but the closest they can get to wrapping their minds around how this is possible is, oh, Jesus died and now his ghost is here. But Jesus says, it's not my ghost, it's me. Hi, I'm just coming to say hello. And this encounter with the impossible, it makes Peter especially extremely impatient. Peter demands a sign that this really is Jesus. And he says, Jesus, if it's really you, call to me and I will walk out on the water. And so Jesus says, okay, come on for a stroll. And it happens. Peter gets out of the boat and actually walks on water. What does it feel like to encounter the impossible? I guess it starts with your definition of what is possible. How do you determine what is possible in your life, in the world, in the course of humanity? How do you choose what is possible? Well, most of us, we study some form of science and physics. We have an understanding of what can scientifically occur in the world. But haven't most of us experienced something that happens and there's no way of understanding it? One time, my friend Justin and I were backpacking through the wilderness in northern Arizona. It was an overnight camping trip, and we had hiked all the way out to this totally deserted space. We set up our tent, we made a fire. Justin is a very science-oriented person, a very fact-driven person. And the two of us were sitting around chatting, looking at the stars. It was gorgeous. And suddenly this huge, it looked like a giant comet coming straight for Earth. It screeched across the sky. And after it passed by, we heard a huge thud. We'll never know what that was, ever. But more than 10 years later, we have not stopped debating about what it might have been. No matter what it was, the one thing we can both agree on is we don't have enough evidence or enough details about it to say specifically what that loud noise following the bright streak across the sky was. So our ideas about what it might have been were determined entirely by what we thought was possible. Justin thinks it's entirely possible for things to fall from the sky, to crash through the Earth's ozone, to burn up on entry, to make big noises, and I totally agree. It's possible that I think other things are possible too. I'm not saying I believe in aliens, but it was a big bright light and a really loud noise. What do you think is possible? I'm willing to bet that whatever you think is possible, you can be very patient for it to happen. You are very good at having calm endurance through adversity while you wait for the possible to come around. Whether it be healing after a sickness, reuniting with loved ones after a time apart, finding a new job or a new source of income when an old one dries up. If you believe that something is possible, you can have a lot of patience to work hard, to create space, and wait for that possible thing to arrive. But this story this morning, it highlights what happens to us when we encounter the impossible. When God calls to us to participate in something that should not be possible in the course of humanity, we tend to get very scared very quickly. We tend to be very impatient. Peter was doing it. He was walking on the water. And why did he stop? Why did he start sinking into the ocean, into the lake? He saw some strong wind. Imagine, you're standing on water, you're walking on water, and suddenly it's very breezy. Oh no, the breeze. But I can't make fun of Peter because I myself have tried to meet God in impossible situations. And almost every single time I have been so scared and so impatient, I give up right away. Over the last several months in this time of pandemic, we've all learned about what is not possible. We've all learned about the limitations that this virus puts on us and our lives, our ability to go about constructing society as we always had before. We're so focused on what is possible and what is not. I wonder if we've taken time to consider, is one of the daunting things about this time, is it that God is calling us to do impossible things? And that is always terrifying. Because if we don't believe that it's possible, we have no patience waiting for it or trying to work towards it. And most unfortunately of all, this last week, as I've been talking with people about patience, what do you have patience for? When is your patience stretched the most? What do you see as being impossible? It sounds as though the vast majority of us believe that the most impossible things have to do with connecting with other humans. People who are divided politically, coming to a table and making a compromise. People who have different beliefs or come from different ways of life or have different skin color or different experiences in America, they can't talk to each other. They can't trust one another with their stories, with their truth. They can't work together to make new things happen. In an age of political division, during a public health crisis, and every single one of our systems falling apart in front of our eyes. It's hard to trust what is still possible. It's hard to exhibit patience for much. And yet patience is the very delight that is required if we care about meeting God and accomplishing impossible things. We knew it was impossible to safely have a blueberry festival this weekend, so instead folks from our church got together and said, well, what if we get a bunch of volunteers from the church to organize making pies together, blueberry pies, strawberry rhubarb pies, different kinds of pies, and what if we sell them and ask people to come by and we'll drop them off in their cars? Is that possible? Oh, it was very possible. We sold over 100. A huge thanks to all of you who had a hand in putting that together. Oh, we can't worship indoors. We can't gather in person for worship. So what do we do instead? Well, we try our best with technology. We try our best online. It doesn't quite work for everyone. My question for you is it the only thing that's possible? Or is it the thing we've had the most patience to figure out? Friends, in a time of being extremely aware of what is possible and what is not, I encourage you, I implore you, and I remind myself, with our God, nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible with our God. If it seems like God is too limited or too slow to act, or not able of rising to the occasion and bringing miracles in our lives, I would suggest it's not a problem with God, it's a problem with our own ability to be patient, to create space for things that seem impossible, things that we don't understand, and calmly wait for them to come into being. So what do you think is possible? How can you create space in your life to wait for everything that God is willing to bring? Even the stuff that's supposed to not happen at all.